The massive forests of Arachnida were always a wonderful sight. Even before it could be considered a unified country, the Mancers had decided that the disproportionate numbers of eight legs in this land warranted its own identity. Ironically enough, Verdin noted that it was this very Mancer-created identity that the tarantula called upon to invoke pride in the power and history of the eight legs. Still, both the unnaturally huge forest in the northern reaches and the beginning of the desert that stretched into one of the numerous beetle territories were a sight to behold. And when he took them in, he could actually feel what inspired the others when they sang the tarantula's ridiculous song about the birthing land. What was not moving was the groaning spider beneath him. Wolf Clan, he thought, another strange Mancer name that held no meaning to him, but he couldn't be certain. Besides, clans weren't supposed to matter anymore. They did, even to the tarantula when he wasn't talking about them not mattering, but they weren't supposed to. "This is the 15th one we found this week," another soldier informed him. Verdin couldn't be certain, but the speaker looked disgusted with the groaning one's weakness. "They're getting worse. Some of the soldiers are, according to rumors, talking about an end to the forward march. I'm surprised, frankly, that these cowards won't brave the deserts because of a few sick spiders." They were young, this detachment, a recent group put together to restore the front line's numbers. This one didn't seem any older than the others, though he bore body paint that indicated rank. Either way, Verdin wasn't particularly interested in this spider's surprises. Venla had suspected a beetle spy, and though he couldn't be certain, the longer his investigation went on, the more he agreed with the idea of sabotage. There was a pattern emerging with these poisonings. "Among these whisperers, is there anyone you think might be so cowardly as to not want to fight? As to make certain that these soldiers can't fight? Is there anyone cowardly enough to be a traitor?" "I think all cowards are traitors, Commander. But to actually do something against the collective, to betray the very ideals of our homeland, why, if there's any beetle that happened to be born with an extra set of legs low enough to do that, I haven't met him personally." The response wasn't surprising. "Can you think of anything linking the victims, Commander? Among the 15, is there any similarity that exists among so many of them that it would be difficult to dismiss it as coincidence? For example, are they of the same rank, the same clan, the same supply station?" The young but somehow decorated soldier thought about it for several minutes before concluding, "There are quite a few supply stations here, Commander, but all the victims that I know about have come from 2. "Good. That should be useful information." This was actually the third time he had heard this, but he had no clue about who the traitor was and wanted to make sure said traitor wasn't leading him into a trap. Unless the 3 random soldiers he had chosen to look into the bodies with him just happened to be a part of the conspiracy, Verdin felt he was safe. The quartermasters looked bored when Verdin approached them. Even when he was close enough for them to see his body paint, their rise to attention was sluggish and half-hearted. One of them practically sighed when giving the formal "Commander" title. Verdin informed them of why he was there. Their tone changed immediately. "That you would accuse us of such incompetence!" "I think you're accusing me of incompetence because I don't care if you are my commander. No spider can accuse me of treachery and expect to be taken seriously ever again." "Yeah," his partner agreed. "We here are some of the best laborers in all the collective. The tarantula himself couldn't find fault with our loyalty and dedication if he wanted to." Making a mental note to never ask for supplies from this particular station, Verdin asked how they could be certain that their food supplies hadn't been tampered with. The quartermasters, even angrier than before, showed firsthand just how reliable their inspection skills were by grabbing a set of soldiers' rations and stuffing their faces with it. It would be 3 days later, when Verdin was making just as little progress in the other station, that he learned that both of them had fallen ill with the same sickness as the soldiers. 2 supply stations? Venla demanded. We were only certain about one, but some of the ill had eaten from the other, so I had them both temporarily shut down to be sure. Do you know the saboteur's identity? Everyone who had access to the food supply is currently in prison, awaiting interrogations. The contaminant has been identified. Apparently, it's a substance grown in the traditional scorpion lands. This got the Golden Orb's attention. It almost made Verdin regret saying anything. He hated having the Golden Orb's attention. Scorpions! Why would they use a scorpion contaminant? Interesting question. The substance doesn't occur naturally in this area, at least not in usable quantities, and there's no historical evidence to suggest that the beetles have any supply. It would be completely impractical to use in place of any other known toxins. Thus, the only reason I can think of for its use is familiarity. Scorpions used against one another fairly regularly, right up until unification. It is slightly more efficient than their tails, and doesn't require direct combat to administer it. Scorpions. It disgusts me to think of it, but the fact is one of those brutes does explain how the beetles were able to get through to it. They were always stupid. Even though the collective has done more for them than it has even for the spiders, it barely shocks me. She turned to the scorpions guarding the doorway to their meeting hall. I trust your loyalty. Do you know of any of your kind who have been behaving suspiciously? No scorpion that I would be willing to associate with would be low enough to betray the trust and generosity of the spiders, Lady Venla. Verdin seriously doubted that a scorpion working directly for a high-ranking general would know a scorpion working for a supply station regardless, but he kept that to himself, just as he kept his other suspicions from Venla. Although they might indirectly benefit, he doubted the beetles were involved in this. Starting such a small-scale problem this far away from the front line, getting someone here to corrupt an agent and relay orders, no, it would just be a waste of resources. Though Venla wouldn't admit it, and really none of the collective's leaders would admit it publicly, there were a lot of the Eight Legs that despised their new country, and he suspected it was even greater among the non-spiders. Supply stations had recently begun delegating mathematical tasks to the scorpions, and many of them would probably be figuring out for the first time that they were getting less food than their web-spinning counterparts. Some might have wanted to act out. If Verdin hadn't seen their victims, he might have been unable to blame them.